Good morning, everyone. I see our room is filling up. I hope everyone started off their Tuesday, as you'll learn more, but drinking lots of water to get you started for the day. We'll give it just another minute or so to let folks enter the room, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining us for our Listos California summer briefing. As we did last year ahead of the 4th of July, we really wanted to make sure that the incredible work behind Listos California we're sharing more broadly, and with sort of the emerging information around weather. We're super excited to have a variety of different subject matter experts with us here today. We could move to the next slide. They're all on screen, or they should be, but just want to give a quick introduction. We'll move through a little bit of why we're doing what we're doing here at Listos California and what we see in that importance. We're excited to be joined by David Lawrence from NOAA, who will talk a little bit about the immediate and hopefully seasonal forecast that folks can expect. Excited to have Dr.Rita Nguyen here as well. She is one of our leaders at the Department of Public Health, our Assistant Health Officer. Charlene Gloriani from Cal OSHA to talk a little bit about what workers can also expect and in terms of rights as we see some of the heat events we're expecting over the course of the summer. And definitely last but not least, Captain Andrew Ramos will be joining us to talk a little bit about water safety, especially as we know families are going to head to those waterways to stay cool. So with that, of course, technology is never a friend. We'll move to the next slide and just give a little bit of a situational analysis. We know that the wet winter weather has really fueled a variety of sort of natural growth in wildfire-prone areas. As such, earlier this year in May, we did try to get out ahead and educate communities, especially in our rural areas, about wildfire preparedness. And over the last several weeks, we've also been increasing our education, especially around fast and cold water conditions. Of course, also with our climate becoming hotter and drier, we also are very focused on extreme heat and heat events that we anticipate over the summer months. So the content that you'll see here is really focused on a summer of safety, extreme heat, wildfires, of course, smoke, and then power outages and being prepared for those. So to kick us off, I'd love to welcome David to the virtual screen here to tell us a little bit more about what we can expect in the weeks and months to come. David?
Thank you, Sonya, and good morning, everyone. I'm David Lawrence with the National Weather Service. Just sort of want to talk about this upcoming heat event that will impact a large portion of the state of California. We have seen several heat waves so far this year, of course, but most of those have been pretty short duration events. Unlike this particular one that we are forecasting, starting today, continuing through the weekend, and likely at least the first half of next week, we're forecasting extreme temperatures. The map that you see there, kind of in the middle, shows that we have excessive heat warnings in effect for a large portion of the state of California, beginning either today, tomorrow, or Thursday. The exact timing doesn't matter so much. We are forecasting those temperatures in that 100 to 115 degree range each afternoon across those locations. And the compounding factor with this particular heat event not only will be its long duration, again, we expect the heat to continue through the middle of next week, but increasingly warm overnight low temperatures. Whereas with the previous events, we saw overnight temperatures falling into the 50s and 60s. For this particular event, most overnight low temperatures will hold in the 70s, perhaps even just the lower 80s for some locations. So that lack of recovery overnight will certainly compound those particular heat impacts. We do expect significant health, safety, and other impacts across the state, again, due to the very long duration of this. And if you're curious from a climatological standpoint, July is, of course, the hottest month of the year across the state of California on average. But looking at some of the specific numbers for various locations, most areas tend to only average a handful of days above 100 degrees throughout the month of July. In this particular case, we're expecting many locations to approach or exceed 100 degrees for at least 7 to 9 days, perhaps even a bit longer. So this is a climatological anomaly, if you will. This is not normal for this time of the year. Again, a very long duration and likely very impactful heat event across the state. The map on the right that you see there also shows, as we head again toward the middle of next weekend, that July 9th, 10th, 11th timeframe, that we continue to have a high risk, so a greater than 60% chance for these hot extreme temperatures to continue, particularly for the interior portions of California. And again, I just want to stress the long duration of this particular event is pretty abnormal, even for the state of California. If I could have the next slide, we will sort of, where are we heading for the rest of the summer, if you will. So the map that you see displayed before you shows the seasonal temperature outlook for averaging the months of July, August, and September. The greatest probabilities for above normal temperatures are focused to the east of California across the Great Basin and Southwest. And it does appear that the climatological signal for the remainder of the season, after we get past this particular heat wave, is a little more uncertain closer to the coast in California, where we actually have what are known as equal chances of above, near, or below normal temperatures. And what that really means is there's no strong signal in the modeling that we use to be able to sort of predict just how things will shake out climatologically speaking by the time we average all those months together. But nonetheless, I do want to stress that, again, this is the hottest time of the year. So even though overall we may tend to average maybe just slightly above normal or even near normal for some areas, we do expect that there will be additional periods of heat that likely develop throughout the summer. So be sure to pay close attention as those forecasts become a little more short-term in duration, if you will. But in the meantime, again, I really just want to stress how significant this heat, this particular stretch of heat is likely to be across the state, with many, many temperatures exceeding 100 degrees day after day, right on through the middle of next week. And if you're wondering when will this particular heat event break, it does appear toward the middle or latter portion of next week, we may begin to see things trend down a little bit, but I don't want folks to let their guard down just yet. There's a lot of uncertainty in the forecast beyond the middle of next week, so be sure to pay close attention to those forecasts as they're updated. But again, in the short term, a very, very impactful heat event across the state of California. I'll be happy to take questions at the end, but otherwise, that's all I have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, David. Appreciate seeing a bit of the visuals as well, just to tell us what's on the horizon there. Next up, would love to welcome Dr. Rita Nguyen to tell us a little bit more about the risks around heat that we could expect. Dr. Nguyen, we're so grateful to have you for the last 2 years at our state doctor, the State Department of Public Health, and your experience and expertise as a practicing doctor here in California for many years before that. Please, Doctor.
Great. Thank you, Sonya. And thanks for this opportunity to highlight just how serious extreme heat is for the health of Californians. Most folks do underestimate just how serious these heat waves are and the impact it can have. Heat actually kills more people directly than any other weather-related hazard. Certain groups are certainly at greater risk of heat-related health impacts, including those who are unhoused, those who work outdoors or indoor environments that don't have air conditioning, older adults, pregnant individuals, infants and children, people with disabilities, those with chronic health conditions, and those with lower incomes. I think a key important is to recognize that anyone really can be a victim of life-threatening heat stroke. A lot of the reasons why is that folks underestimate the risk. Some of the factors that can contribute to that is if you're not acclimated or used to hotter conditions, that sudden changes in temperature can really impact folks, even young and healthy. A lot of our infrastructure doesn't enable cooling necessarily in certain cities. So in San Francisco, where I used to work, for example, people could get into a lot of trouble even at 80 degrees because they're either not used to it or, again, no air conditioning. And what the previous speaker had said about the lack of cooling happening at night, that actually also really increases the risk for individuals. And so it's really important that folks are vigilant and recognize that heat can really cause serious issues for folks. Next slide, please. And so heat-related illnesses includes cramping you can feel, heat exhaustion, which can also proceed to heat stroke really quickly, even within minutes to hours. And that's considered a life-threatening emergency that you need 911 help for. One thing worth noting is that heat-related illnesses also includes things like stroke and heart attack and worsening of underlying conditions like diabetes. So we know that in heat waves, that folks tend to have higher rates of complications of their underlying diseases. So those are the other reasons why heat waves can be so deadly to Californians. Some of the warning signs that people should keep an eye out for are listed here, and that includes heavy sweating, muscle cramps, weakness, headache, nausea or vomiting, paleness, tiredness, irritability, or dizziness. The most worrisome signs are if folks are getting confused, if they're passing out, if they're vomiting. These are reasons to seek medical help right away. They may be having heat stroke, which is, again, a life-threatening emergency. The other thing worth note is that when folks are starting to have heat exhaustion, they're also not thinking as clearly as they normally would. And so you may not be making the best decisions of staying cool coming out of the heat, dialing back on your activity. So keep an eye out for each other and just be aware before you start being exposed to heat or being more active in the heat. Next slide, please. And so signs of dehydration can vary between adults and seniors and children and infants. And this slide just gives some tips on how to keep an eye out for those signs. Next slide, please. And so 3 important takeaways is stay hydrated, stay cool, and stay informed. As it relates to staying hydrated, everyone should be drinking plenty of fluids, just as Sonya mentioned. Even when you're not thirsty, you should be proactively drinking. It helps cool you off, and it helps keep up with all the fluid you're losing from sweating. Be careful with sugary beverages and alcoholic drinks, as well as caffeine. Those things can actually dehydrate you or lower your blood pressure. And then certainly if you have other medical conditions, speak to your doctor about how to handle your fluids. And if you're on a low salt diet, thinking about how to manage your electrolytes and salt tabs, but you should speak to your doctor about that. Next slide. Stay cool. I would actually say the number one tip here is to rethink your activities. So especially as we're headed into a very serious heat wave where there's not cooling happening at night, rethink your plans in the next week. Perhaps it's not the best time to go camping or pick up that game of basketball. Just be really careful about what you choose to do. To the extent that you can, stay in cool, air-conditioned places and think about cooling centers if you live in a place that doesn't readily have air conditioning. You can cool off with wet towels or a cool shower. Wear lightweight clothes and sunblock. Next slide. And stay informed. So checking the weather forecast, paying attention to extreme health alerts. I recognize that with climate change, people may start getting alert fatigue, that every day feels like an extreme weather event, which is unfortunate because this is sort of our new reality and we can't let our guard down. So do pay attention to the heat alerts, and then check on each other. Be aware of what the signs are of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, and check on the older adults around you and those who may be more isolated and have less access to resources. And I think that's my last slide.
I'm Charlene Gloriani, Program Senior Safety Engineer for OSHA, and I'm here to talk to you about heat illness prevention and worker protections. Next slide, please. I think we can kind of gloss over this slide. We talked about it already, so let's go to slide 3. Okay, so OSHA regulations include one on heat illness prevention in outdoor places of employment. Employees have rights to access to water, shade, and the weather must be monitored, and workers must be watched for acclimatization during high heat. Employees must also be trained. Next slide. So access to water means that potable drinking water is clean and available at no cost and be in enough quantities. Next slide. Access to shade is required when temperatures exceed 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Please keep in mind that shaded areas must not cause exposure to another health or safety hazard. Next slide. When temperatures exceed 95 degrees, a buddy system should be in place, and employees must be monitored for signs of heat illness. They also must be encouraged to drink water. Next slide. Also, cool down rest periods when temperatures exceed 95 degrees. They are required every 2 hours. Next slide. Keep in mind, especially for new workers, they must be observed for 14 days during acclimatization. We want to make sure that someone is always with them, that there's a buddy system. Next slide. Employers must also establish and implement a heat illness prevention written plan and training, and that includes training on plan for emergencies, access to water, shade, and rest, and where to get help. Recently, on June 20, 2024, the Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board approved California Code of Regulations, Section 3396, Heat Illness Prevention in Indoor Places of Employment. This standard applies to most workplaces where the indoor temperature reaches 82 degrees. It establishes required measures for indoor workplaces to prevent worker exposure to risk of heat illness. The Office of Administrative Law has 30 working days to review this proposal. So keep in mind, the Standards Board has requested that the regulation take effect immediately after OAL approval. Generally, the regulation would apply to indoor temperatures when they are above 82 degrees. For a variety of good reasons, the indoor heat regulation is designed to be very similar to the outdoor standard. The biggest difference is that rather than high heat procedures, the indoor heat regulation requires employers to assess indoor temperatures and generally, if it's above 87 degrees, cool the workplaces or implement other controls, such as engineering controls to lower the indoor temperatures. Next slide. Employees have rights to file a complaint to OSHA, and I've got the information written here, www.dir.ca.gov. And they have a right to exercise their labor rights without retaliation or discrimination. Next slide. We also have a call center, and it is available from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and provides information to workers on how to file a confidential complaint, worker protections, outreach services, and educational materials. And anyone can call our number. It's also bilingual. Next slide. And finally, here's a list of resources for you if you need any other information. And the next slide is for agency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll be sure to get these slides out to all of the participants. I know there's already been a lot of great information. Appreciate that, Charlene. And I think we'll give the team just a moment to switch back over. We had a chance, Listos California, to spend a little bit of time with Captain Ramos and the team that's part of California's sort of swift water rescue network. So Captain Ramos, do you want to tell us a little bit more about all the great things that you all are doing to prepare for these waters?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Sonya. This is, I think this is a great venue to share all this information that is going on around the state. And as I'm reading all these slides with you all, I'm noticing there's a lot of, hey, let's reach out to emergency services when things look bad, right? When things are going bad, you call 911, you reach out to emergency services. Well, we have to prepare for those instances. So we have a team. Our team is of 16 people, and that's just our OES Swift Water Rescue Team, 7 here in Sacramento, supported by Cal OES. And our team trains very rigorously on water safety. We have rescue swimmers, boat operators, paramedics, EMTs. They're trained in various sorts of rescues, but focusing on the water rescue, how to get a victim who is entrapped in a water situation. What we would like to do is just avoid all that altogether, right? And so that's what this whole meeting is about awareness and making sure that everyone is aware that the water today, right now, is very swift and cold. And we need everyone, because 911 can't be there for everyone. Emergency services can't be on all these shores in California to help prevent these accidents. So I need everyone who's listening to fill that role, to be that safety net for all of us. Make sure you're looking at those dangerous situations and being the voice of reason. Asking, hey, where's your life vest? Where are our life vests? Where do we get a life vest from? And so that's what we're asking you guys to do. Our group, I said, is specially trained in the swiftwater rescue, boat operations, emergency medical stuff. We conduct about 30 rescue-related situations a year, which that's quite a bit. And unfortunately, most of those are ending in drownings. I'd also like to say that we have not recovered any of our drownings that are wearing a life jacket. So if you have a life jacket on, you can really prevent these situations from occurring to you or a family member or a friend. Always be aware of the swift moving water. Not only is it cold, it's fast moving, but there's also hidden dangers underneath the water that you can't see. And to me, that's the scariest factor, right? It's like down there it's a drain, basically. It's a sieve that could capture you down there. So please just be aware and be cautious on the water while you're out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. And I think the team's put together a couple other slides here, just the kind of overview of those conditions that you mentioned. So they'll have those to reference later. And then last but not least, some of these water safety tips.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, those life vests are available to you in the Sacramento area. You can reach out to your fire departments in the Sacramento area or anywhere in California if you just want to look out for where you can get a loaner life vest. I would highly recommend that. I know they can be a little bit expensive if you're looking at some expensive ones, but they also have some inexpensive ones that will help you protect one another. Some things on here that they're talking about is if you're in the cold water is to just stay calm, breathe slowly, get your shoes off, and then get to the shore. Remember, you're not going to make it upstream in the swift water, so just try to get to an either shore, left or right shore, and just be aware of any of those strainers. Keep your head up and swim to the shore. If you do fall out of a boat, you're in a boat, you fall out, just try to get to the top of it and wait there for help. I think the most important thing of all these slides is if someone does fall into that cold water, throw them something that floats, have them hang on to it, and then call 911. Do not try to save them yourself. That's often what happens. We have a family member follow in to try and save them, and then we end up having two rescues going on at the same time. And that's very sad. So just remember to throw something in there that's floating and call 911 immediately. Take that time to call 911. Thank you.
Thank you again, Captain, for all that your team does to prepare and for sharing some of those tips. My name is Sonya Harris. I realized at the beginning I didn't even have a chance to introduce myself because I was so excited for all of you to join us. I am the senior advisor for Listos California and really have the chance to support the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, as well as an incredible team that helped put together some of the work that you'll see here in just a moment. We really, if we could move the slide here, look to insights and sort of inspiration for our work. We are fortunate enough to do some formative research work to really help us understand how we can best create materials for each and every one of you, our community trusted messengers, and for the public. And kind of as we started at the top, really setting the stage for this summer is the weather, the extreme weather that we saw over the winter that causes some of the things that the captain talked about, whether it be that fast and cold water or dry conditions throughout California. If we move to the next slide, we'll also remind you in May, in advance of Memorial Day weekend, we did have a chance to release a variety of content really related to preparing for wildfire. So, unfortunately, that content is still relevant as we head into the next several months. So, as families are preparing their homes, we talk a lot about home hardening. We really just want to make sure that the people part and the animal part of that sort of preparation is also top of mind for folks. So lots of really great tips, a lot of content, but just wanted to refresh your memories on a little bit of that sort of summer kickoff that we've already done. If we move to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of the creative strategy that our team has brought forward. Again, this is in the vein of all of the learning that we've been doing since the Listos California initiative, or then pilot, launched following the campfire, and really all of the good work we've been doing hand in hand with so many community trusted messengers across the state. We really want to make sure that our messages are clear, informative, and relatable. So here's an example on screen of how we're really thinking about encouraging Californians to stay cool, with easy tips. As the captain mentioned, there is always this important tension between the resources that we have that are limited in our emergency response and the number of people that we have here in California, and this opportunity to be connected through systems like emergency alerts. We find that people get themselves in trouble in some of these moments because they don't know when to get out and when that threat is coming. And emergency alerts are sort of a really incredible system that each of our communities and counties manage at the local level that helps you stay in direct contact with those emergency responders, making those real-time decisions as they're seeing and protecting their communities. So really important for us to continue to stay connected to them through those emergency alerts. So a lot of what you see in our content really pushes to encourage signups for that. Next slide, please. As we look through sort of this suite of issues, we're excited that Listos California really puts equity, language access, or justice, as some would call it, and really trying to help families be prepared with straightforward tips. So here on screen, a few examples of some of the content that our team has prepared for you all for the summer. Easy tools that you can pull right down from listoscalifornia.org, our resource hub, and get those out into the community. These particular examples here are in Spanish, Hmong, and Punjabi. Next slide. In addition to some of this content, we've also really focused on being relevant in our social media space. Californians consume an incredible amount of information. When we look to research the 18 to 39 group, those folks spending a lot of time on social media also don't really feel as prepared as some of their older counterparts. And so we really want to make sure that as we talked about, that direct sort of tip-based information is getting to them, but it's also being a little bit aspirational. We really want to try to model for Californians what are the ways that you can stay safer. So here, just a few creative examples that our team came up with. And of course, everyone loves their furry friends. So starting with also thinking about them and staying cool too. The family there in the center, while they are in the park, you'll notice that they've got a little bit of sun protection there. And of course, as they're in waterways, much like the captain said, want to make sure that they're using the appropriate safety devices. As we also move through the summer, we'll move to the next slide here, and we know wildfire smoke is also an issue. So we do have a variety of content that really encourages Californians to kind of think about their top 3 steps, checking air quality to understand, is it safe for me to be outside, or maybe limiting some of those trips, making sure that they're thinking about closing doors and windows to limit smoke sort of exposure and staying inside. And also, in some of our social media tips, really some best practices for masks that help separate the actual particles in the air. Sort of some of the guidance that you might remember from COVID, I think does here apply. N95 masks are really the best way for the best fit to help folks this summer if they are exposed to that wildfire smoke. And last but not least, we know with any sort of extreme weather, we see this with down power lines in the sort of more wet season. Suite of content that we've created is really around power outages. So you'll see here just a couple family related moments, again, making sure that folks are signing up for power alerts, power shutoffs rather, making sure that devices are powered up. And just a quick tip on fridges. We know a lot of the times families and the importance of making sure that everyone is fed and comfortable. In addition, a lot of our online social messaging is also focused on our Californians with disabilities or those that might have medical devices. We really want to make sure that they're utilizing all of the medical baseline programs. So just a quick call out to make sure that some of that remains in your messaging, because it's never too much to remind folks to make sure that they're subscribed to those programs. On the next slide here, just a quick preview of our social toolkit. Our Listos grantees that have joined us know this well. Very easy to use images, again, people forward, family forward images. We know the motivator for folks to be prepared and to take some of those initial steps is really around keeping family, friends, loved ones, neighbors safe. So you'll see a lot of that in the imagery, and our team at Lamont has done a really great job also curating easy to copy sort of alt text to make sure that our images are also inclusive, and some of those captions that you can easily copy paste over and make edits as you need. We'll move to the next slide. We're very excited to continue some of the work that we started last year ahead of some of the incredible wet weather we had. We had the chance to curate a suite of Indigenous language videos, which have seen well over 10,000 views in aggregate. Here's just a quick sample of one of those videos on our YouTube, Listos California YouTube, and the link is there. We are partnering with some community trusted messengers in California to do a second suite of these. They are in production, and we look forward to releasing those later this month. So please stay tuned and sign up for our Listos California e-newsletter, as that will be the place that we will use to share those updates with you. Next slide. One of the things that Listos has also really been focused on is creating a two-way dialogue. Over the course of the last 2 years, we did a small pilot last year to test some of this with our local emergency responders and really leaning into some best practices of two-way dialogue. We have an incredible peer-to-peer phone banking program. So Californians are calling other Californians with a friendly script and really encouraging them to sign up for local alerts. As of last month, we've been able to call and either talk to or leave a message with over 3 million Californians. I think the really important part is really how we're connecting to life-saving resources. These conversations that we're having with folks are in those communities and high-risk zip codes, based on previous events and happening in multiple languages. And of those that we talked to, we've been able to confirm that 1 in 4 or 25% are now signed up for emergency alerts and helping them with some of that technical assistance component. So it really is one of the pillars of the work that we're doing here at Listos California. Last but not least, here on resources, we'll move to the last slide. We have curated a suite of evergreen materials. So really with community-based organizations, trusted messengers, pastors, all of those folks, folks like Captain Ramos too. I'm going to keep picking on him because we're excited to have him, can just pick up and use in multiple languages, 13 languages, are all on our website. So here again, going to that Listos California Resource Hub is an incredible place for you all to keep in mind, especially as you're headed into those moments. Our team has also moved into sort of rapid build of content. When we start to hear from our local emergency responders, again, calling back to last year's incredible flooding, we had some colleagues in Merced say, hey, this would be really great for us to have to distribute in the recovery space, and we were able to help get some of those broad top line messages out. So really great partnership, and appreciate each and every one of you that also send us feedback, because sometimes these pieces are always good to kind of keep fresh and updated. Last but not least, before we move to question and answers, over 650 folks over several different stops across California last September came out to join us. We had emergency responders, community-based organizations, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, other state departments, really coming to the table to get to know each other. There's nothing better that you can do as a community member that's interested than understanding what resources might be around, but more importantly, having that name and phone number of the resource that's so important in those moments. We talk a lot about some of COVID-19 response and how important that was, because so many relationships had been established through Census 2020 outreach, and sort of those warm connections were at the ready. We're excited that the Ready Summits will be coming back and starting a little bit earlier, so we can get to even more stops across California. So if there's a date in a city here that looks familiar to you, please jot that down, and the team will be releasing more information on locations and some of the objectives for these really interactive community workshop sessions. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn us over to question and answer. We're so excited that you're here, and you can use the Q&A feature, and the team will help us moderate some of this, sort of some of the questions. We've got some of our experts still online, and if as Dr. Nguyen mentioned, having to follow off, we're happy to also follow up in writing. And also hello@listoscalifornia.org is always a great place to go. While we wait for a couple of those questions to come in, I'll also just share, we're very excited of the governor's continued support in making sure that Californians have what they need. He recently announced ready.ca.gov, which is on screen here. It helps you navigate to whatever sort of issue we might be worried about at the moment. You'll see a live screen grab from this morning. This extreme heat banner helps Californians get to cooling centers. Of course, those topic by topic, extreme heat, wildfire, smoke, power outage, evergreen content here for you to access. And Cal OES is the official place to get sort of the latest on any information or emerging issues. So the first question I see here is from Brianna, and you suggest, should we use cooling center or cooling places? In some of the research that Listos California has done, cooling center might have sort of a variety of different connotations to it. Some preconceived thoughts about who should or shouldn't go there. One of the things that we really try to focus on is plain language. And so really trying to get Californians to focus on cooler places to go. And sometimes that's not always sort of government sponsored facility dedicated to only cooling. We've seen a lot of families get reprieve in libraries, shopping malls, grocery stores, so on and so forth. So thank you so much for asking that question. Let's see if I can get one for one of our guests. Let's see, Soledad's asking, what should we look for when we're purchasing a life vest? So maybe Captain Ramos, I'll pick on you first.
Yes, you want to make sure that it's something that's going to support that individual that you're buying it for. So if it's for a child, make sure that it's intended to be worn by a child. An adult, they have so many different varied life vests out there, but they do have the Coast Guard approved life vests that are out there. So yeah, just look at the labels on the inside and just see what kind of safety factor it has. But you want to have one that's going to have the buoyancy to keep you up out of the water for your size and weight. And for children, particularly make sure that it goes underneath, in between the legs, so that you don't have that vest popping up off of them.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Another question we have from a guest is, can we expect more translated materials coming soon? All of the Listos California content will be available in the resource hub, so please check that out there. And if you've got any questions or needs, also please feel free to email hello@listoscalifornia.org. Let's see. Vanessa, with a comment here and a question. We need to centralize resources, for example, cool zones that might not be accessible, by way of transportation, hours of operation, technology. Is there any work to centralize these resources? I think this is a really great question, Vanessa, and really comes down to local planning. We are aware that some of the work that the Heat Relief LA team under Marta Segura's leadership, is thinking about some of those elements, but would encourage folks here that to engage with their local emergency management teams, ask those questions, see how you might also be able to identify community-friendly locations. Let's see. There's a question here around locations of summits. And how we landed on those cities. We did our best to try to visit new locations outside of those that we did last year, but also trying to be centrally accessible, by modes of transportation. So if you've got recommendations for other locations we should consider, assuming that we have great attendance from all of you and others this year, we would be open to seeing what else we can schedule into the future. Let's see. I think, Captain, we're coming back to you. Maria asks, for a very husky youth, what about for a very husky youth where adult does not fit quite right? More tips.
Okay, so it's going to be size dependent. You're just going to have to get that vest on the individual. And I would say when you get into the water, you want to make sure it fits on them. You want to be able to pull up on it and feel if it's going to pop up off their body. And just make sure it's comfortable for them to enjoy and wear for the day. I would say wear a shirt underneath that, like those sun shirts underneath the vest, so you're not having any kind of skin getting irritated or anything like that. And get in the water and see if you can move that vest on them a little bit. You want a little bit of movement, but you can't have it popped up where it's, kind of bothering their airway or kind of bothering their way they can turn their head. And you're just going to have to size it appropriately for the different kids. Most of the adult vests are like a one size fits all, and you can kind of like cinch them down onto the kid and make it fit a smaller adult or a larger child. So I would say you're going to have to play with them a little bit. I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact answer to that. It's going to be a little bit of just fitting them onto the child.
Thank you so much. Let's see, we've got another question from Jennifer around social media platforms that are used by each age group. I think that's something we can follow up on. Our team at Lamont Digital does an incredible amount of work, as well as Honey Agency, to curate sort of these messages, and perhaps we'll find a way to incorporate that into one of our next Listos grantee sessions. Let's see. We have a question around service animals being allowed into cooling centers for unhoused individuals and seniors. Will water be available at cooling sites? Again, each of our sort of cooling centers are locally operated, so would encourage you to check out the cooling center site sort of listing that we have, and finding more information about your individual sites that are local. But generally, service animals are required to be, allowed into facilities, as they are providing that important role for their human companion. Thank you so much for that question. It looks like we've got a couple other technical questions from some of our Listos grantee on Listos grantee monthly calls and some of your community engagement reporting. I'll ask you to direct those to hello@listoscalifornia.org, and we can have the appropriate Listos program team member answer those questions. Great. Well, I think we'll give that just a couple, maybe more minutes, but a big thank you to each and every one of you. You know, the first step to helping our communities be more prepared is to be informed, and certainly having a friendly face like each and every one of you reaching out to share some of this information really does make an incredible difference. You know, as we continue to stay focused on summer preparedness over the course of the next couple months, you know, please, if you're seeing things that you need or you think that would be helpful to our team, hello@listoscalifornia.org. Our partners at Valley Vision, a nonprofit here in California, monitor that all the time. And so we've had a lot of really great suggestions through that, as well as a good opportunity to make sure that we're thinking ahead as best as we can. Great. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you soon. And again, please feel free to sign up for our e-newsletter at listoscalifornia.org for all of the latest. Stay safe and drink some water.